Welcome to My Life. We're talking to Char Sutherby here for part 2, and we're glad that you could rejoin us. As you know, Char has been on the Leonard Village Council for over 20 years. She's lived in Leonard for well over 40 years. She's very concerned about the history of Leonard, Michigan, and its preservation. And in our first episode, we got you beyond high school, beyond college to you married your current husband, and that's what brought you here to the Leonard area.
Yes.
So that's where we're going to pick it up right now. And I believe you folks moved into the family home, is that correct?
It's not the family home. It was the home that Dan's grandfather came to Leonard with his family to build.
Oh.
And I believe it was his great-grandfather, not his grandfather. So those Sotherbys go back quite a few years.
So approximately what year was that home built? Do you have
1904.
Okay, very good. And you told me something else interesting. We're going to get off track just a little bit here, but before we go too much farther, I want to hit on this. Your biological father and your mom divorced when you were very young.
It was before I was born.
Before you were born?
Yes.
Okay. But you were able to track him down and meet him later on in life.
What happened when I was 17 and about to graduate from high school, a letter came to the postmistress at Falmouth, Michigan, saying, my name is John Martinez and I have children and I would like to find my children. And being a small community, smaller than Leonard, the postmistress knew my mother, knew us kids, and put it in an envelope and said, Hazel, you do with this as you wish. And I was interested. I said, I'd like to write him a letter. And Mother said, well, if you'd like to, you may. And so I wrote him a letter. And from that point on, he was in my life. And when he became, he was in his 80s and he began having heart trouble. Then the Cleveland VA hospital contacted me and said, you're listed as his only relative. But I had a sister and 2 brothers also. Mm-hmm. But you were listed as his only relative, and he needs major surgery. We need for you to come down. And so I went and was with him while he had his surgery and was instrumental in his life until he passed.
So it sounds like you became very close to him before he passed away.
I did. And I'm grateful that I did. I can tell you several things. I'm grateful that I had the opportunity, but I'm also grateful that he didn't raise us. He was an interesting man, but not necessarily the kindest person. And we kids were very strong-willed kids. I think there would have been a very difficult time because he was also a very strong-willed person that believed children should be seen and not heard. And we really kind of like to be seen and express ourselves, and I don't know if that would have gone over too well with him.
Did he also make contact with your siblings?
No, I mean he was willing to, but they weren't willing to see him. They remembered him. I had nothing to remember, nothing to be angry about.
So your brothers and sisters were older than you?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. What about your mother? Did she have any interest in?
No.
No.
No interest. She was married. She was happy, and no interest at all.
Okay. All right. Getting back to Leonard, Michigan.
Okay.
Although there was something else you mentioned that I don't want to forget about. You did do a DNA check through Ancestrycom. We'll get back to Leonard, Michigan, by the way. Tell me more about that because I'm just curious about that.
I think it's fascinating, and if anybody's interested in doing it, go on to Ancestry.com. Now they have various prices, but I watched for sale because I wasn't sure what I was getting into. Anyway, it cost me $79.95, something like that. And sometimes it's even less than that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, you register online, they send you this tube and you're going to spit into it. And I thought, good Lord, but it's really only a small amount that goes in there. And you send it back, you register on your computer that you've sent it back, they tell you when they receive it, and about 3 weeks later it comes onto your computer that you can open it up. And there's a color wheel that will show you what part of ethnicity you belong to. And then if you're interested, it will give you histories of those areas, not necessarily relating to you, but like a general overview of what it is to be Irish or whatever.
Sure.
And then there is another wheel that says matches. And you click on that, and then they have, because other people have had their DNA tested, what are maybe your first cousin, second cousin, or relatives that have also done this, and many of them, if you click on them, have a family tree. I was interested in doing that because I'm thinking I'm going to find my dad's family. So far, I have not found anyone close. They say they're close, but they've hidden all their information. And when they hide their information, you have to get a hold of them, tell them who you are, and if they choose to share back, they will. I've done that with a couple. I haven't gotten anything. So I don't know if they think I'm bogus. I don't know what the deal. But on my mother's side, there was all these relatives. And so, but I'm clicking on them, and I don't see anybody I know in their family tree. And the first one was listed as a Joe Pearson. I thought, well, Pearson is not a name I recognize. I ignored this name, and then one day out of boredom I hit it, and here's my great-grandmother's name. I was so excited, just thrilled. And this girl and I have been Facebooking for more than a year, and I just met her.
How about that?
I was thrilled to meet her.
Yeah, now that's one of the good things about Facebook. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's really what it's for in my mind.
Yes.
Did you ever have a chance, or did you ever have the desire to talk to your biological father about his family history, or?
I did try to, and if you can understand, the ethnicity is different. Now, I'm raised in a Dutch community. He was of Mexican and Native American descent, so I'm not sure where their history goes, but he wanted to talk nothing of his family.
Really?
He said they're all dead. And I found after he passed away that several of his brothers and sisters had been still alive, and I could have met them. But
Wow.
for whatever reason, I don't know if he thought he would be jealous. I don't know what the deal was. He didn't want me to meet him.
Wow.
It was disappointing.
All right, let's get back to Leonard, Michigan now.
Okay.
You and your husband, your current husband, moved into a home that was built by his grandfather?
Grandfather and great-grandfather.
Great-grandfather.
Yes.
Okay. What was your husband doing at this point? I mean, he had met you in the Houghton Lake area. You folks got married on Halloween.
Yeah.
And then you moved to Leonard. What did he do? Oh, he was a contractor, wasn't he?
He was working for a company that built Balin buildings, and some were like pole buildings, some were like grain elevator legs, that
Right.
kind of stuff. Well, shortly after we got married, he went to work for Truck and Bus, and he worked there a short time, and he got laid off, and he went to work for Chrysler, and he got laid off from Chrysler, and he went to work for General Dynamics. And worked for them until they left the area. And he was able to keep his retirement vested with them so that when he turned 65, he could retire from there.
All right. We have to take a little break here, but we'll be
Okay.
right back with Char. Don't go away.
Canine Stray Rescue is Oxford's own local dog rescue. Each year they take in hundreds of dogs and bring them into suitable homes. A certified nonprofit organization, Canine Dog Rescue strives to give pound dogs a new leash on life. To donate, adopt, or even volunteer, call them at 248-628-0435 or go to their website, dogsaver.org, and click on the Canine Stray Rescue League link.
Back with Char Sutherby here on My Life. Char just told us about moving to Leonard with your husband. He eventually wound up in the auto industry, but then worked for, did you say General Dynamics?
Yes.
And then they moved out of the area, and what happened after that?
He worked for the last few years, he worked for a company called Safety King, and they cleaned air ducts for furnaces and air conditioners, that kind of stuff.
Now, were you a stay-at-home mom during that time? Or?
No, I had worked in the factory some. Part of the time I did. When our kids were little, I would do things where I worked nights, he worked days. So we didn't have babysitters a lot.
Right.
And then I went to work at Lester's restaurant. Lester's was just a little place, and became their kitchen manager, and worked for them for 13 years. Worked a short time in a factory, and then started a catering business because I really liked working with food, and I've done that for quite a while.
So you still do that?
I don't anymore. I don't have a license anymore. And state of Michigan says you have to have a licensed kitchen to work out of. And I could not secure a licensed kitchen, so I didn't do that anymore.
How did you get interested in history out there?
I'm not sure, other than I just kept reading the books, and it just bothered me so to see, like I say, the mill going downhill, other buildings and businesses going away just because no one was taking care of things.
Did you get interested in it right away when you moved into the area?
No, I wasn't interested at all.
Okay.
But I guess I can say that I was blessed to meet a lot of these older persons, and without ever realizing it, I was listening to their stories, and somehow it was sinking in someplace, and I realized over time those things are important. They do matter.
Yeah. You've lived in Leonard for, what, 45 years or so?
Yes.
Seen a lot of changes during that time.
I have. When I first came to Leonard, it was all old people, I thought, and me. And I could give you these kind of examples. There was a lady who lived not far from me, and she'd say, "Charlene, what are you doing coming home at 3 in the morning?" I thought I was an adult and I could come home at 3 in the morning if I wanted to.
On you.
Yes. Or she'd call and say, "You get off that ladder. You have no business on the roof of your house." Okay.
Wow.
That has all changed. You have a lot of younger families now, and I don't climb on the roof anymore.
Yeah. Now, did your mom remain over by Houghton Lake?
She did. And actually, she ended up in Cadillac. Her husband got Alzheimer's and had to go into a home, and so she took a place not far from him so she could have lunch with him every day.
Uh-huh. How old was your son when you moved to Leonard?
My son was 4 when I moved to Leonard.
Okay. Did he adapt pretty well to the changing scenery and everything?
I think he did. He dearly, dearly loved my husband's dad. My husband's dad was the fire chief at that time, and that's all Al could talk about was the fire department, and that he was going to be a fireman someday.
Yeah. It sounds like you know a bit about your husband's background and his family history too.
I do.
Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, they were Masons, and they actually their history, they were from England. My husband had his DNA done, and he's like 80% English.
Wow.
So yeah, but anyway, they were from England, and they were in the trades. I don't know much about them in the Rochester area. They came out to build our house. They built a number of buildings in the area. There's buildings in Almont that they built. At one time, they had a store, and if you were in Leonard and going north, they were west of the light and on the north side of the road. We have a small picture, and it's one of those that's on heavy cardboard. It's a real old picture, and it shows things that they made, like pillars and handmade block. Our house is made of handmade block, so they would have had the forms to make those kinds of block for people.
Did they come right to this area from England, or did they live elsewhere
They
first?
were living in Rochester. Now, where they were before they went to Rochester, I'm not sure. And most of the Sutherbys seemed to have a trade, whether it was cement work or hauling gravel or something of that sort. They all seem to work in those kind of trades.
So what did your husband end up doing after General Dynamics?
He worked a short time for a company called Safety King, and he cleaned ductwork for them.
Right.
And now he's retired.
Ah, okay, very good. Tell me, what was there that piqued your interest about history in Leonard, Michigan? Was it the mill itself, or were there a number of things going on, or?
Well, I can tell you sort of what happened. I was asked one time, and I think it was because, here, I can tell you what it was. We had these coverlets made up to make money for the Strawberry Festival. And these were woven covers, and we got all these pictures from history of Leonard. There was the mill, the stores, the church, all these different buildings are on this coverlet. And because I had helped so much with that, they assumed I knew a lot. And so Leonard School wanted us to come up and give a talk to little kids about these buildings. So I had to study. And so I took the book out and I read about all the different ones. And I think that's where my history, my interest in it started. Once I read it, I started buying more books. I have like 5 different books on history of Leonard in northeast Oakland County. And so from that point on, I started being asked to come and speak like I was an expert or something, which I'm not, but I always have to get my books out and read, so I do know something of what I'm talking about.
So was there something in particular that piqued your interest about the mill itself? Was there something about that building?
Well, I worked there for a short time.
In the mill?
In the mill, and it was a like a little store at that time. And the owner was going to have surgery, so she asked if I'd take over and run it, and I run it for probably a month. And sold candy, sold knickknacks, whatever, in this little store.
And how is that coming along right now?
Right now it looks pretty rough. They've had 2 demolitions on it, and they have torn off most of the front part of the building. Now there's still this lean-to side that's got to come off, and that lean-to side was probably one of the last parts put on there. That's where the horse and wagon, they would come up with their grain, and there's, I want to call them hoppers, but it's probably the wrong terminology, on the side of the building that they would open, and the grain would go down in there and would go into the building, feed up into these tubes, and I don't know if it was processed or just simply blown through those tubes to go out on the other side on the train cars. But because my knowledge of that is limited, but I just know that that's the part that's coming down. The tall part, that's what's going to remain. That will become a store museum. And we have things already donated for that. Now the phase 1 plan is to put a deck out front for people to picnic and what have you. They also plan on the south side to have a handicap accessible deck to come up in there.
Yeah, I want to talk more about that and possible ways other people can help if they want to. We'll be right back with Char Sutherby.
Take off your hat, throw it in the corner. Take off your hat, throw it in the corner. Take off your hat, throw it in the corner. I don't see why you could stay a little longer. I'm talking about Boozy. Woo! Boozy, that's who.
Back with Char Sutherby, talking about the mill, the old mill.
The old mill.
In Leonard, Michigan, and you were telling us what their plans were and so forth.
Yes.
If folks want to donate or help out with that, is there a way they can do that?
There is. We have a GoFundMe page.
You do?
We do.
Okay.
And they can, I'm trying to think, I think you'd have to go to the Village of Leonard website to get to the GoFundMe site. I'm not positive on that. Or you could call the Village of Leonard and ask them, because they
Right.
would tell you. But we do have a GoFundMe site.
You mentioned the Rochester Heritage Group to me earlier. It's kind of interesting how they got involved with that. You want to relay that?
Well, they were part of a historical group that put on an event every year in Rochester, and things didn't go as well as they planned. Sometimes you're popular, sometimes you're not, and they had lost their popularity or their standing with the powers that be, and so they began raising money to help restore other buildings in Rochester, and realized they didn't have anything more that needed help. And they called me and said, you know, this is who we are. Do you have anything you could use some help with? I said, we sure do, the Leonard Mill. And so they have been raising small amounts of money and helping write grants for the mill.
Wow. Let's talk about Char Sutherby and the Leonard Village Council. You got involved with that over 20 years ago?
Yes.
Tell me, what got you interested in that?
Well, I'm trying to remember now, but somebody quit or resigned or whatever, and I went in to fill in their position. And that's, so I finished filling their term of office and have just run for election ever since. I find it all very interesting and fascinating. There's times when it's dull, but I really do enjoy doing what I feel I can to help the community. And I take and go to conferences whenever I can to see if I can network with others to do something more to help the Village of Leonard. And that's how I got involved with Main Street. Last year I went on a mill tour, and we went, this was a 2-day event, went all over, not just Oakland County, but got in all different kinds of mills. Very, very interesting. Now, in September, I'm going to, with Sue Basardi from Oxford, we're going as a team, we're going on the Saginaw Trail. And it is about the Native Americans, and they had the Saginaw Trail. And from that trail came part of our roadways, and we're going to get the history of that.
Wow. So it sounds to me that history is a big part of the reason that you're on the Village Council, historic preservation and that sort of thing.
It is. I fully appreciate what Leonard has, what they're trying to do. They have a small budget, but they have this dedicated group of people that are trying to do the best they can with what they have. And I'm happy to be part of that group.
What do you think's the biggest change you've seen in Leonard in the 40-some years you've lived out there?
The biggest change, and I may not be popular for saying this, the biggest change has been it's not so much a family running the Village of Leonard. And I don't mean to insult anybody when I say that. And I have to be very careful how I say that, because I like that family, I like those people. But when I first came there, if it wasn't their idea, it didn't fly. And they were pretty much in the running of everything within the town. Well, you know, people have died, people have gotten older, younger people have come in, and they've allowed some of us to actually become involved.
Well, that's great.
It is.
Are you worried about things getting too big out there and too populated? And
I don't think that's going to happen in my lifetime.
really? And the reason for that is?
I've always been told Leonard is a bedroom community, and that means they live there, but they don't work there. They go other places to work. And especially with this downturn in economy, a lot of people left this community, couldn't afford to stay there any longer. It's starting to come back, and I believe it will. But again, you got to have a certain amount of money, not so much to live in Leonard, but if you're going to have property, you've got to have a job that will support that property. And what I see coming with the economy, a lot of people aren't getting those kind of jobs anymore.
Yeah, it's getting tougher.
It is.
You're on the Cable Commission,
I am.
and you've been on the Cable Commission for about, what, 10 years now?
At least. It's probably been longer than that. I haven't really kept track.
You've seen a lot of changes with that, haven't you?
I sure have.
What got your interest with that? I mean, back 10 years ago, there probably wasn't a heck of a lot going on like there is now.
What happened was Leonard was part of this consortium. Oxford, Oxford Township, Leonard, and Addison Township. They never sent a representative. They just expected that they were covered. And things were starting to become issues. And if Leonard wanted to have a say, they had to send somebody. I said, okay, I'll go. And there's been some times it's been uncomfortable, but for the most part, I've learned a lot, and I've met a lot of nice people, and I'm grateful.
And you've seen a lot of changes too, haven't you?
I sure have.
I mean, 10 years ago, did they even have a community television station?
We've had a community television station quite a long time. When they first had a community television station, I want to say there was one fellow, maybe just 3 people. There weren't many. And they basically read the news. And there wasn't a whole lot that they did other than reading the news. And I don't even know how long they were on the air. I mean, as far as time-wise in a day. And when I first came on council, the Cable Commission, they were in what is now the middle school, Oxford Middle School. We were in a little hallway part. There were no windows. It was very dark and very tiny in this little area. And it became a problem for Oxford schools, and I could totally understand why it would, because here you have people who are part of a commission that the school has no control over. There's no background checks on these people. They come and go as they choose, and you have students around them. To me, that's red flags all over the place.
Boy, I guess.
And so that was Oxford's school's concern, and that's why we had to find another place.
What's your vision for, well, let's start with Leonard, Michigan. What's your vision for Leonard, Michigan? Where would you like to see that community go in the future?
I would love to see Leonard have a more active downtown. Not so much larger, but an active gas station, maybe a small restaurant or a place where they can stop and get coffee. Maybe a few, and again I say few, unique little shops where, you know, there's something to draw you to Leonard for some reason.
Right, okay. If you had the opportunity to relive your life, would you change anything?
I've thought about that, and you know, I think we've become who we are because of the mistakes that we make, and I could say that my first marriage was a mistake, but then I wouldn't have this wonderful son that I have, and so no, I don't think that I would. And if he had been Dan's son, he would have been a different person than he is today, and my grandchildren would have been different. So no, I wouldn't.
You're going to be a great grandma pretty soon.
I am in October.
Wow, exciting.
Very exciting.
Hey, thanks for showing up. We're
Thank you
happy
for
to have you,
having
Char.
me.
We're happy to have you in our community.
Thank you.
Char Sutherby, we'll see you next time.